The Zoppo Speed 8 is the latest smartphone to come out with a deca-core processor inside. Many still believe that having an 8-core processor in a smartphone is pretty much overkill. So what about having a 10-core processor? Hey everyone, this is Alex from Android Headlines, and this is our full review of Zoppo Speed 8. Now, the Speed 8 is actually a pretty good looking device. It's sporting a two-tone finish with the sides being a silver and the back being a dark blue or black depending on the lighting. And while the back appears to be brushed aluminum, it's not real aluminum. It's slightly plastic. Now we're not 100% sure on that, but that's what it feels like. Now because it is plastic, this is both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that this means that there are no antenna lines anywhere on the device. But that also means that the Speed 8 doesn't feel as high-end as something like the HTC 10 or the Nexus 6P, both of which sport full aluminum unibody designs. The back isn't removable here, which means you're left with having the SIM card slot on the left side of the device, with the power button and volume rocker on the right side. Now Zoppo has placed the 3.5mm headphone jack at the top and the USB Type-C port at the bottom. Now it's really refreshing to see that Zoppo went with USB Type-C on the Speed 8, especially where most smartphones in this price range are still sticking with the tried and true micro USB connectors. Finishing up the hardware tour, there is a fingerprint sensor on the back of the Speed 8, just below that 21 megapixel camera and dual LED flash. Now the camera, as is expected these days, does protrude a little bit from the back of the device. Actually, it protrudes quite a bit. It's a bit unfortunate, as we would have loved to see Zoppo fill that space up with more battery and make the camera flush with the back of the device. But the battery is still quite large at 3600 mAh. Now the fingerprint sensor here does work fairly well, although it did seem to take a bit of time to recognize my finger. It's tough to gauge whether that's due to it not recognizing it or the software just being a bit slow. Now the Speed 8 does run Android 6.0 Marshmallow, which means that you can use the fingerprint sensor for logging into apps that support the fingerprint API. That's definitely a nice touch here. Now around the front, Zoppo has given us a front-facing speaker. Much like the Moto G4 Plus, this again is just a single front-facing speaker, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean it's terrible. It's actually quite good. In fact, it gets really loud without distorting the sound. The speaker is so loud, in fact, that oftentimes I had the volume turned all the way down and it was still plenty loud for listening to music and watching videos. Something you really don't see or hear every day with smartphones. Inside is the MediaTek Helio X20 processor running the show with 4GB of RAM. Now this is a deca-core processor and it's the same processor found in the Meizu Pro 6, which we reviewed a few months ago. The Helio X20 runs fairly light, meaning that you don't feel the phone getting warm at all, even when playing games and such. And when it's in standby mode, you can get some pretty amazing standby time on the battery. In fact, we were able to leave it unplugged for 8 hours, of course while we were sleeping, and lose just 1% of the battery. That's virtually unheard of unless you're looking at something like the Alcatel K6000 Pro, which has a large 6000 mAh battery in there. In day-to-day usage, the Helio X20 performed as you'd expect. It was nice and snappy, and we didn't notice a single slowdown at all. Now, a deca-core processor may be a bit overkill, but it looks like MediaTek and Zoppo have worked together to make this one really good. The display here is a 1080p panel, similar to the OnePlus 3. It's one of those things where the display isn't terrible, but it's not that great either. Viewing angles are nothing to complain about really, and neither are the colors on the actual display. Now there are times where the screen just doesn't get bright enough, but for the most part brightness is right on par, especially using adaptive brightness. Now of course the digitizer is always important here, and it performs great. We didn't have any trouble with the digitizer recognizing our touches on the display at all. Now the sad thing here is that battery life is pretty mediocre, to be honest. We went into this review thinking that we would get some amazing battery life out of the Zoppo Speed 8. I mean, we have a 1080p display here with a 3600 mAh battery, which should net some great on-screen time, but it didn't. Now it can definitely get you through the day, but sadly it won't do much more than that. And if you're looking to get a full day out of the Speed 8, it'll be a good idea to leave Pokemon Go out of your usage. Zoppo has kept things pretty stock here as far as software is concerned. It's stock Android 6.0 Marshmallow, which is the latest version of Android, until Nougat comes out in just a few weeks. Sadly, it is running a fairly old security patch. We're looking at the March 1st security patch here. It would definitely be nicer to see the June or July security patch here, but this also means that we may not see updates, or at least not frequent updates to the Speed 8, which is a bit unfortunate. There's not much to say here about the software. The only real change from vanilla AOSP that was made is the quick settings, with a few extra quick settings added, and that's really about it. It's also refreshing to see that the Google Now launcher is pre-installed here. So not only do you have an app drawer, but you also have Google Now on the left side of the home screen. Now of course you could download that from the Google Play Store, but it's nice that you don't even have to do that. Now on the back side there is that 21 megapixel camera from Sony. It's the same sensor we've seen in many flagships from 2014 and a few in 2015, including the Xperia Z3 and the Motorola Droid Turbo. It's a pretty great sensor as long as there is great software to back it up, and it looks like Zoppo may have dropped the ball on the software part here. While some pictures do come out quite good, many others don't, especially in low light, which is where the camera sensor typically does really well. Now that's the Zoppo Speed 8. It's a fairly cheap Android smartphone and it checks most of the boxes here. The only real issue is really the camera and maybe battery life. But once again, it's not a perfect smartphone, and that probably won't ever exist. Now if you're looking to pick up the Zoppo Speed 8, we do have links down below so you can do that. Now be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.